On the 17th of March, 180 AD, Emperor Marcus Aurelius died at the military camp of Vindobona while defending Rome's northern frontier. Across the empire, soldiers mourned the death of the philosopher emperor, believing they had lost one of Rome's greatest rulers. But before his final breath, Marcus made a decision that would change Roman history forever. Instead of choosing the most capable successor through adoption, as the 5 good emperors had done for nearly a century, he left the throne to his 19-year-old biological son, Commodus. For the first time in generations, Rome was no longer ruled by the best man, it was ruled by birthright. At first, many Romans welcomed the young emperor, hoping he would continue his father's legacy. But Commodus had little interest in philosophy, military leadership, or governing the world's greatest empire. He preferred luxury, entertainment, and personal glory over duty. One of his first major decisions shocked the Roman army. Rather than completing his father's campaigns against the Germanic tribes, Commodus quickly negotiated peace and returned to Rome. The exhausted legions obeyed, but many experienced generals believed years of hard-fought victories had been wasted. Back in the capital, Commodus transformed the imperial palace into a place of endless celebrations. Lavish banquets, expensive games, music, dancers, and extravagant feasts became part of daily life. While the emperor entertained himself, corrupt advisors and ambitious officials quietly gained influence over the government. Soon, conspiracies began surrounding the throne. In 182 AD, Commodus' own sister Lucilla was accused of plotting to assassinate him. The conspiracy failed, and Lucilla was executed. From that moment onward, Commodus trusted almost no one. Fear replaced confidence. Loyal advisors were dismissed. Powerful senators were executed, and suspicion spread throughout Rome. The emperor became increasingly isolated inside his palace, convinced that enemies surrounded him. As fear grew, so did his desire to be worshipped. Commodus no longer wanted to be remembered as the son of Marcus Aurelius. He wanted to become a living god. He ordered statues of himself dressed as Hercules, carrying a lion skin and a massive club. Temples displayed his image, coins carried his divine titles, and people were expected to praise him as more than an emperor. Many obeyed out of fear rather than loyalty. But the greatest shock was still to come. Commodus would soon enter the Roman Colosseum, not as a spectator, not as an emperor, but as a gladiator. For many Romans, this was unthinkable. An emperor was meant to command the arena, not fight inside it. Yet Commodus believed the arena would make him immortal. What followed would become one of the most bizarre and controversial reigns in the history of the Roman Empire. As Commodus became more obsessed with his own greatness, the Roman Empire slowly slipped into chaos. He spent less time governing and more time organizing extravagant spectacles that celebrated himself rather than Rome. The Colosseum became his personal stage, where thousands gathered not to witness professional gladiators, but to watch the emperor himself enter the arena. Dressed as Hercules, wearing a lion skin over his shoulders and carrying a heavy club, Commodus fought wild animals, executed prisoners in staged battles, and challenged gladiators who had little choice but to lose. Every victory was carefully arranged to make him appear invincible. The Roman people were expected to cheer, but many watched in silence, believing their emperor had turned the dignity of the imperial office into a public performance. Even worse, Commodus demanded enormous payments from the state treasury every time he appeared in the arena, claiming Rome should reward its greatest champion. Meanwhile, corruption spread throughout the government. Powerful officials bought political offices, taxes increased across the provinces, and honest governors were replaced by men loyal only to the emperor's inner circle. The Senate grew increasingly powerless, as Commodus viewed many senators as potential enemies. Executions became common, noble families lost their wealth, and fear spread through the capital. Then Commodus took his madness even further. He renamed the months of the year after himself, renamed the Roman legions, and even attempted to rename the city of Rome as Colonia Commodiana. Statues of the gods were replaced with statues of Commodus, and official ceremonies praised him as the new Hercules sent to rule mankind. Many Romans secretly mocked these actions, but almost no one dared speak openly against the emperor. While Commodus lived in luxury, disasters continued across the empire. Fires damaged parts of Rome, food shortages created unrest and corruption, weakened the government's ability to respond. The empire that Marcus Aurelius had struggled so hard to protect was slowly losing the discipline and stability that had made it the greatest power in the ancient world. Behind the palace walls, however, another conspiracy was beginning to take shape. Members of Commodus' own court, including those closest to him, had reached the conclusion that the emperor himself had become Rome's greatest threat. Before long, they would make a decision that would end one of the most controversial reigns in Roman history and throw the empire into another dangerous struggle for power. By 192 AD, Commodus no longer ruled as a Roman emperor, he ruled as a man consumed by power, fear, and delusion. Every day, he demanded greater praise from the people, believing he was not merely the ruler of Rome, but a living god. The imperial treasury was nearly exhausted by his extravagant games, lavish celebrations, and endless public spectacles. Corruption had spread through every level of government, while experienced generals and honest senators either lived in fear or had already been executed. The Roman Empire, once guided by wise emperors like Trajan, Hadrian, Antoninus Pius, and Marcus Aurelius, now stood on the edge of collapse. As the end of the year approached, Commodus announced an unbelievable plan. On the 1st of January 193 AD, he intended to appear before the Roman people dressed as a gladiator and officially begin his new consulship from the gladiators' barracks instead of the Senate. To Rome's political leaders, this was the final humiliation of the empire. His closest advisors, including his chamberlain Eclectus, the Praetorian prefect Letus, and his companion Marcia, realized that if Commodus remained alive, Rome itself might not survive his rule. They secretly agreed that the emperor had to die. Their first attempt was poison. During a banquet, Marcia mixed poison into Commodus' wine. The emperor drank it, but instead of dying immediately, he became violently sick and vomited, removing much of the poison from his body. Panic spread among the conspirators. They knew that if Commodus recovered, every one of them would be executed. They acted without delay. That same night, they summoned Narcissus, a powerful professional wrestler who often trained with the emperor. As Commodus rested in his bath, weakened by the poison, Narcissus entered quietly and strangled him to death. On the 31st of December 192 AD, Commodus died at the age of 31. His death ended 12 years of chaotic rule. The Roman Senate immediately declared him a public enemy and ordered many of his statues destroyed. His name was removed from inscriptions, and the city that he had tried to rename quickly returned to being simply Rome. The empire celebrated his death, believing its nightmare had finally ended. But the crisis was far from over, with no clear successor. Powerful generals, governors, and the Praetorian Guard all competed for control of the throne. Within hours, Pertinax was proclaimed emperor, but his reign would last only a few months before he too was murdered. The Roman Empire was entering one of the most dangerous periods in its history. The age of the 5 good emperors was over. Years of civil war, assassinations, and political chaos were about to begin. The next chapter would reveal how the Roman throne was shockingly sold to the highest bidder, an event unlike anything the ancient world had ever witnessed.